Hey, I'm T.A. Charlie, and welcome to The Road to Concord with Professor Joe Bakanovic. Homeroom is on Rumble. You just go to Rumble and search the channels for The Road to Concord. It's one word. When you find it, you go ahead and you click follow. It might mean you got to set up an account, but it's fast, it's easy, it's free. I did it, you can do it. For those technologically challenged members of the class, you can also catch us on Facebook and YouTube. After the show, it's uploaded to Podbean, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and BitChute. Just look for The Road to Concord. You can go to the blog page, that's theroadtoconcord.com. That's where you'll find all your show notes, study notes, and handouts for the class. The phone is working. If you don't know how to call in, email us and we'll think about it. Finally, you can email a professor at joe@theroadtoconcord.com. He's a little slow, but he'll eventually get around to emailing you back. This show is currently mainly listener-sponsored. If you are interested in advertising your business on the show, please email us. With that said, we ask for your participation on a value-for-value basis. If you find our show of value to you, then you provide an equivalent portion of your labor and treasure through the donate link on the Road to Concord blog page, the show description on Rumble, and in the comments on the other streams. And thank you to all of you who have and will support this show.
Good morning. Welcome to the Road to Concord. Today is Thursday, July 9th, 2026, whatever. Yeah, 2026. I can't count anymore. See what happens when you forget? You get old. You forget everything. I'm your host, Joe Bakanovic. Today's show, the title is, Why Is It, Whether Individually or Collectively, Our Species Refuses to Remember? I kind of have my Velociraptor hat on, but I also kind of have my Dr. Evil shirt on. I'm in a mood today, folks, and it's got nothing to do with you or the world or my family or anything like that. Well, I guess it has to do with the world, but humanity. I've been asked on several occasions by different people that realize how much I've come to know about the world. They go, how do you live with all this? This is one of those days where it's hard for me to live with it because it's all in my head and I haven't pushed it into the corners. And folks, let me tell you, I'm a recovering narcissist, and there was a time where I thought I knew a lot. I don't know jack. And I mean that. I don't mean that false humility. I mean, there is so much more that I want to learn, and even then I'll barely be scraping the. So this is just going to be a day where I'm going to be a little bit all over the place, but I'm going to start with not so much an I told you so, more of a I warned you. So let's do that. This is going to be a screenshot, share my screen here from the Gateway Pundit. Female cop in Texas threatens to ticket a veteran and a Christian street preacher for quote unquote offensive speech at a pride event. If someone is offended by your talking, then we have a problem. That's what the cop told him. She was going to ticket him for public nuisance or public disturbance. Why? Because the members of the Rainbow Jihad were acting up. So she's going to ticket him for their behavior. I told you this was coming to the United States. And I've shown you some of the stories of where they're actually putting people in jail in England for doing this. Here, they're going to ticket them first. They will start jailing them next. It's coming. Why? Because people have forgotten. Willfully forgotten. Now, I want you to bear with me here for a moment. This is going to be a tough day to keep up with me. I know it will, because I know the mood I'm in. And Charlie, or Natasha, feel free to pop in here anytime you think you need to save the audience from me today. This may not be big enough for you to see, but it doesn't matter. I'll read it for you. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 3. And he threw him into the abyss and shut it and sealed it over him so that he would not deceive the nations any longer until the 1,000 years were completed. After these things, he must be released for a short time. This is the devil. Deceive the nations. Well, after he is released, he's allowed to deceive the nations yet again. Deceive them into believing things that are not true. How does he do that? Well, for one thing, he removes your history. He takes your history away from you so that if you are ignorant, then you don't know. And that's what this one is all about right here. To be ignorant of what occurred before you were born is to remain always a child. For what is the worth of a human life unless it is woven into the life of our ancestors by the records of history? Marcus Tullius Cicero. So what he's saying is, unless you become part of the great play that is human history, what good is your life? It's nothing. And how do you know your part in this human history if you don't know it? If you don't know what came before you? Who did what and why did they do it? To what were they reacting? What were they trying to accomplish? Now, he was a Roman. And he did not believe in, he was pagan by my definition. He didn't believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And yet, he's teaching something that the Bible teaches very clearly. If you are part of Yahweh's people, you are part of the play, the grand design, and you have to find your place within the kingdom, the body of Christ. What role do you play? That in the book of Revelation, it says every one of us will be given a stone with our own name, our own Shem. What role do you play in the building of the temple? That's the brick. You're one brick in the building of the temple. That's what that imagery in the book of Revelation is. What role do you play? Well, if you're ignorant of the Bible and of the scriptures, you can never possibly know. And if the only understanding you have of that history is what your preacher teaches you, then you're at the mercy of your teacher, which is one of the reasons that our schools have done things the way they do them. I'll come back to Cicero in a minute. Let me just do this. We're going to have another quote from him here in just a moment. So, our schools, let's start there. That's one of our principal ways of remembering. Well, if you destroy a nation's history, you destroy its people. That's why, to me, the two things our schools should teach first and foremost is religion, and not general or comparative religions, but the Bible, because this is a biblical nation, or it was. And all of our founding documents, our founding ideology, our founding principles come from and are predicated upon the teachings of the scriptures, not my words, the founding fathers' words and their deeds. So we should teach religion of the Bible. They said so as well. And we should teach history. The history from which they drew their knowledge and used the Bible as their guide. Everything else, even the sciences, everything else should be subordinate to those two things. Every child from early on should be taking at least 2 classes a semester in history and in the Bible, the teachings of the scriptures. In my opinion, happen to be the founding fathers' opinions as well. Why? Well, so when somebody comes up to you and says, Barack knows that we're going to have to change our history and our traditions, they would immediately say, well, if you're after my history and my traditions, you're after my culture. You're after the government. You're after the society, my nation, the peoples to which I belong. You are an enemy of my civilization. And then when he says, I am going to 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States, you would recognize the threat. This is why the teachers don't do this. Yes, sir.
You mean to actually teach history instead
Yes.
of just dates and names and places and stuff like that? Actually, the reason why things happened and what the outcomes were of decisions and things like
Which
that.
makes
You mean that kind of history?
which makes history more interesting, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah, much more interesting, and it also gives it a purpose.
Yes, one of my favorite examples of this, folks. When I was younger, I read. I like to read, and I still have all of his copies. There's a science fiction author. He called himself David Drake, not his real name, pen name. He wrote a series of books called Hammers, Slammers. It's about space-going tankers and mercenary mechanics or whatever. And his stories are always so intricate. This group warring against that group, and all the romances and the political intrigue and yeah, it's a mercenary book, but there were political background stories. And he drew every one of them from the history of the earth. He drew them all from our history, human history.
Or from actual history, right?
Yes. So all that intrigue is real. He didn't make anything up. He just gave it different names.
Yeah.
Science fiction sounding. That's all he did. And it's awesome. It's just because some of those stories are just so interwoven and intertwined. But we've lost all of this. And if you ask, I don't know about any more, but when I was in college in 1993, one of my sociology professors, I tell you this all the time, said that when they asked at that time in 93, they asked public education majors, why did you go into public education? I want to change the world. How does a teacher change the world? Well, hold on. They asked journalist majors, why did you go into journalism? I want to change the world. And at that time, for 12 years running, so back to 1981 up till 93, the education majors and the journalist majors were the lowest college entrance scores in the state of Florida for 12 years running. In other words, the least, I'm not going to say least intelligent, but the people who learned the poorest. Because your test score is not always a measure of your intelligence. It might be a measure of what you did with what you know. But the most gullible, the most easily manipulated, the least likely to think are going into, at that time, we're going into public education and journalism to change the world. The answer should have been public education major. Why are you going into public education? To teach the children about their history and how to think properly, where their place isn't. That's what the answer should have been. The journalist, why are you going to journalism? To educate the people as to the facts of what is going on so that they can better make decisions for themselves and their communities. Just the facts. And then rely on their public education to use them properly, to think properly, to right reason. But that is not what happened. And that's because of this. What society does to its children, so will its children do to society. So thank you to John freaking Dewey. I'm sorry, I'm going back to that. He wanted to make the teacher the prophet of his new religion where man is his own God. And they started teaching this garbage to our children. So what you did is you taught our children to be godless, to not know God. And now what are the children doing to us? They are forcing Satan onto us in the guise of love and Christianity. They are literally, we have raised a generation of Antichrist. Now, what are you going to do with them? This is part and parcel of what bothers me. The role of our country's myth, what you call mythos, our stories, our culture, our traditions, both regional and national. These serve as the glue that binds us as a people. So even if they're That's what the Bible does. The Joshua, Judges, 1st, 2nd Samuel, Kings, Chronicles. Those are the history of Israel. And to an extent, Genesis. That's the history of Israel, the Exodus story. If you're Yahweh's people, you need to know that history. It's why Yahweh keeps telling you, remember, 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 so you know where you've come from and won't forget where you're supposed to be going. We teach our children the opposite today. Like, George Washington never chopped down the cherry tree. Yeah. I got that. But that doesn't mean that story's false. And this is where I've been in recent times having to rethink what I mean by true and false. I understand where the postmodernist is going with, your truth is not my truth. I get that. But they take it too far. They have no anchor. They have no chain. Did George Washington chop down a cherry tree and then say, I can't tell a lie? Yes. Well, probably no. Probably not. But does that mean that the story's false? No, it doesn't. Why? Because that's not what the story is meant to be teaching. The story is meant to teach that Washington was a very honest and honorable and virtuous leader of our nation. Somebody for us to admire, not worship, but admire and imitate. So why do we attack him? Because you have to destroy what he represents. So he's got to be he's a deist, and he's not a Christian. He's a slave owner and all this stuff. You have to destroy him. You have to destroy the culture so that you can remake the nation. So when I tell you that what our schools have done is made a nation that does not know God, I don't mean that we don't know about gods or that we don't know about the God of the Bible. You're aware of it, but that's not what the Bible means by know. The Bible tells us that to get to the gospel, you first have to hear it, but then you have to do it. Huh? Yes. The Hebrew philosophy is that to know something requires you to hear it from the proper authority, the proper voice, a voice with authority. You have to hear it, then you have to do it. You have to do something, put it into practical application in order to properly know and to totally understand. You have to have the abstract and the practical together, combined. So when I teach you, well, yeah, this is our history, but that had nothing to do with this, that, or the other thing, and you don't see how the Bible binds this country together as a culture and makes our government, our system of government work, you don't know our history. You don't know our government. You don't know our Constitution, because you've been taught to know about it, but you don't understand it. So to hear and do is the Bible's way of saying to properly understand it. Not know about, but to properly understand. So I've shared this with you before. When a Nation Forgets God, 7 Lessons We Must Learn from Nazi Germany by Arendar Lutzer. It's a little book. So you think the Germans didn't know God? Yeah, they did. Hitler lamented that he inherited a Christian nation. He wished that they had been Muslim. The Germans knew who God was, but they didn't know God. If they had, they would have never allowed Hitler into power. To know in the biblical sense is much more than to just know about. So when a nation refuses to pray, America, To Pray or Not by David Barton. This book shows you what has happened to us. This is a sociology book, folks. And it shows you our social statistics of what has happened since we kicked God out of the public schools and out of the public square. Now, let me explain to you what has happened. Cicero. We made our children godless. we now have godless children who are forcing their godlessness onto our society. So now, and I've also trained the children to think in terms of race. Everything's racist, right? Everything is racist. Not my that comes from Vodi Bachman, a black man, a black preacher, a good black preacher, one that I liked. Yahweh called him home. He's the one that come up with that. Everything is, and he's mocking the race card. He's like, it's not all racist, you morons. Thomas Sowell does the same thing. Another black American. So these Occupy movement and Antifa movement and the teen takeover. You know what you have there? You have godless human beings. Do you know what a human being is when they're godless? They're animals. And they're good for nothing but to be led to the slaughter. Again, not my words. That's Peter. That's Peter. They're unreasoning, unthinking animals. They're human animals. History tells me that you cannot, unless God moves, Yahweh and his Holy Spirit moves, and you have a great revival, which is the purpose of a great awakening. That's what that was about, to call people who otherwise already said they believed, they knew of God. Whitefield told them to know God. He said it was not enough to know of him. You had to live it. You had to walk the walk. So unless there is a great awakening in this country, we're doomed. Why? Because the only way to fix what has been done to us is to purge. Either through war, famine, pestilence, or round them up and tell them, pick, go to another country where you're going to be happy, or we execute you. We have no stomach for that in this country. We won't do it. Why? We have forgotten. And this is where I'm confused. Did we forget willingly? Or do we think that if we did it happen by accident just because we're lazy? Or did it happen willingly? Did we do it on purpose? Do we intentionally forget because we think that somehow makes us innocent? See, like a lot of our lawyers today, they're taught anything but the Constitution. So they don't know the Constitution. That cop, that female cop in the story I shared with you at the opening of the show, she might think she's doing right because she thinks, well, if you're offending somebody, it's your fault. So why doesn't she ticket LGBT community, the whole group of people, for offending the preacher? She hasn't been taught how to think. She hasn't been taught to know the governing principles of this country or to know the principles of law enforcement, policing. That's what she's been turned into. Instead of a peace officer, she is now a police officer. One of these days, I got to get Mr. Zinker on here to explain the difference to you. He knows it. That's why he quit. That's why he quit being a peace officer. He's told me he'll share it with you one day. I'll ask him to. But she's been turned into a stormtrooper. She's there to be enforce the tyranny of the king. And this happened in Texas. So do you do that intentionally, or you do that accidentally because you're not paying attention? Yes, sir?
It's because they're taught that way. Because they are taught a version of Jesus that is all love, accepts everyone, regardless of who they are or what they represent or whatever. You just got to accept everybody because that's the way it is. Jesus loves everyone equally and without judgment. And, this kind of idea is what's been taught to these people. This, what I call a hippie Jesus. And that's what they're applying here. Is they're applying this, oh, you've got to accept me, I'm LGBTQPXYZ.
Rainbow
You've got
jihad.
to accept me as I am, or you're the one that's guilty. And that's exactly what was happening with this cop. She was taught that. That's what she understood, and that's why she was ticketing this guy that was, reading the Bible to these people.
So if I don't know the law, I'm innocent of violating it? I mean, the
I'm
Bible
not
says that,
saying
right?
innocent.
The Bible says if you don't know the law, then God's not going to hold you accountable to it, right? Isn't that what Paul says in
No,
Romans?
no, no,
No, that's not
no,
what he says,
no,
folks. He
no,
says
no, no.
because
That's not what he
none are
says.
innocent. He says everybody knows
Yes,
the law. It's evident in the
yeah.
skies and stars and from that which has been made. There is no such thing as to be ignorant of the law is to be innocent of the law. But I think what has happened is we like to tell ourselves, oh, I forgot that. And we think, well, that's the case. Okay, folks, to willingly forget is the same thing as me telling you, well, that's the teenage girl in her bikini with the monster
Right.
over her
Yeah.
shoulder going, if I don't see him, he won't kill me. Yes, he will. Yes, he will. Well, the monster over the shoulder is the law. Well, I don't see him, so he's not going to be up. He doesn't apply to me. Yes, he does. Yes, it does. But I think in our ignorance, we have convinced ourselves, whether consciously or not, that if we forget these things on purpose, just shove them out of our mind, somehow or another, we're innocent of them. Okay, well, that's fine. I have forgotten everything about natural law. I'm going to go fly off the Empire State Building because I don't know about gravity. Therefore, it doesn't apply to me. Let's see how well that works out for you. I'm going to get my
That's
popcorn and
because
watch
the
you
law
go red
does.
splat.
The law was nailed to the cross, Joe. It's no longer there. We don't have to worry about the law anymore. We can do whatever we want because we're saved through Jesus.
Now, I happen to know the
saved us.
context. I happen to know the context of what Paul's writing there. I remember it. Do you, Charlie? What law was nailed to the cross? Because it applies twice. It's a double entendre.
Well, it's the whole law, Joe. It's everything. We
Yeah.
don't have to
Well,
worry about
folks,
anything. We can do whatever we want.
he was
And everybody needs
specifically
to accept whatever we do because that's the love of Jesus.
in that passage. Paul was talking about the oral law or the oral tradition of the Pharisees. That law was nailed to the cross. But he was also talking about the fact that the Messiah himself is the law. So when the law, the Messiah, was nailed to the cross, he canceled out the oral law of man. We're ignorant. Now, there's no crime in being ignorant. There is a crime in being willfully ignorant. That is a crime to yourself, to your children, to your family, to... Charlie just broke my sarcasm meter. I will forgive a lot of things in the people around me. I do not forgive willful ignorance. Man, if you want to... And that's where I'm at right now. I am upset. Maybe not necessarily with the members of our audience. No. Y'all here, you've got to get a pass. Because if you're suffering through me, you're not willfully ignorant. Not on this show. No. You're here because you want to learn to understand. And you're not here to learn to parrot and mimic Joe, but to learn to think for yourself. But those who avoid shows such as this and choose other stupid stuff, those who choose idiocracy over self-education, the willfully ignorant, they're animals, good for nothing but to be led to the slaughter. I have something I want to share with you about forgetting, willful forgetting. I'm going to talk to you about that in the second half hour. It's about the 14th Amendment. It's about this latest SCOTUS ruling. I was telling Charlie before the show that I want to be president for give me 4 years, and you'll never recognize this country if I survive. Because one of the first things I would do is I would get on national TV and I would tell the nation, I am the chief executive. It is my duty, according to the Constitution, to enforce the Constitution as it was intended. Original intent. Not my words. The words of the men who discussed it, framed it, wrote it, advocated for it, ratified it. They said that to interpret the Constitution other than the original intent of the Constitution is repugnant to the Constitution and therefore is not law. And then I would look the camera dead in the eye, my American citizens dead in the eye, and I would say, therefore, as the chief executive that the people elected, I hereby declare every judicial ruling at all federal levels and all state levels repugnant to the original intent of the Constitution to be null and void, per the framers' own words. And the states will say, you can't do that. And I will say the Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government to each and every state. And if you are going to amend the federal government through judicial review, you are usurping the representation of your people. I have the authority. And if you don't start fixing everything PDQ, I'll remove your governors and your local officials under that authority. You say, well, the president doesn't have that authority. Yes, he does. Nobody's ever looked at it that way, Joe. It's there. The Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government to all of the citizens of the 50 states. The chief executive is the one who is given the charge to enforce that. Well, the courts would never agree. That's outside of judicial review. That's not an authority that was granted to the court to review. They usurped that power. The courts have gotten involved in a lot of things that they have no authority over. We have forgotten. And it is willful ignorance by choice. And I have no tolerance, patience, or understanding for anybody who does that, especially in this regard, because you have a duty to defend that Constitution. That was my oath. My oath is not to the United States government. It is to the Constitution. And it doesn't have an expiration date. Yes, sir.
But what would you do about unconstitutional amendments to the Constitution? Like, for instance, the 17th Amendment.
Null and void. It wasn't even passed properly, and we know that. It's in the record. It's null and void.
That's right. I forgot about that part. That was not ratified properly, was it?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
Neither was the 14th.
Ooh.
The 14th Amendment was not ratified properly. The 14th Amendment, they forced the southern states to assent to it. You can't do that. That's not that's not legal.
When you know history, yes.
Now, we're going to go over a little more history when we come back. Bottom of the hour break, 3 minutes. I'm going to come back and give you a history lesson on the 14th Amendment. See you in a bit. Okay. So the 14th Amendment, birthright citizenship. This has been in the news. This is a perfect place to explain willful ignorance, willfully forgetting so that you can claim what you want rather than what should be. And I agree with Deltaros. It's not ignorance, Joe. It's laziness and a lack of accountability. We do not want to be held accountable, so we claim we forgot. Hillary Clinton, when her brain was jello, I don't recall. I don't remember. Yes, she did. She remembered. She lied. And she should have been prosecuted for it because everybody knows she lied. But okay. The birthright citizenship issue is going to hinge on English common law, the understanding of English common law. Now, first of all, the 14th Amendment was not properly ratified. There were three of them, 14th, 15th, 16th, I think. They were taken as a whole. They were ratified all together. They were shoved down the southern states' throats. That means that it wasn't properly ratified. You cannot force the state to vote one way or another. Otherwise, that's against the freedom of conscience. So you didn't give them a choice. Say, well, the North won, Joe. They have the right to do that. Well, the North was breaking the law. The founding fathers said the states are sovereign, therefore they have the right to secede. That's in the 9th and 10th Amendment. So Lincoln was wrong. Lincoln broke the law. So, well, they still won, Joe. Yeah, but you see, there's this principle in the English common law that says that you're not supposed to be given a benefit from breaking the law. So if you ever break the law, any benefit, whether tangible or otherwise, that you might have acquired from breaking the law is supposed to be taken from you. So it's like if somebody embezzles something, you put him in jail, but you let him keep the money he embezzled, you have broken the law. Your ruling was unjust. Comment on the board from Natasha. Sounds like a might makes right. That's exactly what it is. It's the rule of nature under Hobbes. So the 14th Amendment, 14th, 15th, they should all just be stricken. But doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any difference. Let's deal with where we're at now. I went looking into this. And I found this. This is a paper by Amy Swearer. It says, subject to the complete jurisdiction thereof, salvaging the original meaning of the citizenship clause. It's from February 12th, 2020. And in the abstract, she goes over what is being explained. Now, I'm going to just put all of these in here so Natasha can post them for you. And what she should do, if it were me, is put all of them into one comment on Rumble, but I'll let the AI decide what she wants to do with this. So this is the abstract on this. And Ms. Swearer gets this correct. Okay, this is back in 2020. But what's going to happen is they're going to say that this all hinges on the English common law principle of jus soli, which basically this means of the land. I went down here and it says, in short, a simple rule. It means right of the soil. It means that it's the legal principle that a person's citizenship is determined by the place of birth. So if you're born on our soil, it makes you a U.S. citizen. Here's the problem. If your parents are citizens of another country, then you also have, in most cases, citizenship in that nation. So if the Chinese come over here and they have their baby and then they go back to China, that citizen is a citizen of China as well. So why? There's problems with all of this. There's problems with the court and the way they ruled on this, but that's okay. I kept digging. Here's where the idea that as long as you're born on U.S. soil, you get to be a citizen. Here, it's this ruling, United States versus Wong Kim Ark, 1898. So this is where this comes from. This is what started it all. So from now on, I can send 500 million pregnant Chinese women over here. They all have babies. And now, because of the way we've done our law, we're now Chinese. Because all those Chinese children are going to vote for the whatever Xing tells them to do. So they'll outvote everybody in the United States and they've just taken over the country. Well, that's exactly why the dissent said what it said. If you read down here, right here, where it says dissent, Justice Field, he says, you can't interpret it the way the court's doing this. It won't work. That's not the way the law is supposed to be fulfilled. Nobody cares, right? Well, I did something I'm not supposed to do. I did something that I know most people won't do. Let me put this in here for Natasha. I went and I found congressional debates of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, all 401 pages of it. And you know what I found? I found that there was a senator by the name of Howard in the South objected to the wording of the 14th Amendment, saying, well, basically, you're telling me that anybody who comes here, pops out a baby, now gets to take over the country by immigration and birthing and whatever. The exact thing that the courts have said the 14th Amendment allows, the southern states were objecting to the wording of the 14th Amendment because they said that that's what would eventually happen. And Howard said, oh, nay, no. They said, well, that's what Sol Julie means. And he says, not in this sense. The man who wrote the language for the 14th Amendment said it has to be a much narrower constriction to this, meaning that if you are subject to the laws of the United States, under the jurisdiction of the laws of the United States, then if you have a child on this U.S. soil, that child will be a citizen. You are not, but that child will be. Well, that's what we seem to think we have right now. Oh, no, nay. Because Mr. Howard then brought up, he said, and he's reading the notes of James Madison, Federalist Papers, in which it says, well, if you are a subject to the laws of the United States, you have to be given the right to vote. Yes, Madison said that in the federal, and that is the understanding by which the Constitution was ratified. And Howard said, well, I am in no way, shape, or form arguing that if you are here from another nation, legally or otherwise, that just because you're in this nation and subject to the laws of the country, that now you get to vote. He's saying that is not what Madison meant. And everybody agreed. And the southern states were saying, yeah, but that's what the language is going to give you. And Howard, who wrote the language, said, that's not what I mean by it. And he explained it. So any justice that knows how to read, that bothers to do their job, would go to these notes, read through it, and go, oh, he was restricting jus soli in the way it is applied to the 14th Amendment, and the states understood it this way, and that is the manner in which it was ratified, and therefore, that's the manner we must apply it. Say, well, Joe, nobody's going to go through all of that trouble. Oh, well, this moron did. Steve Deace. You go to, let's see, what is it? Point 210. 2 minutes, 10 seconds in this show, and just watch it until 6:10. And he explains everything I just told you. So how is it he can do it, but the Supreme Court can't? Well, the Supreme Court doesn't want to. That's what that's about. They want these people in the United States, and they want to tell you that they have the right to vote and da-da-da-da-da-da, because they're trying to destroy the country, which makes their rulings illegal. Say, well, Joe, you can't prove that's what they're trying to do. I don't have to prove it. It's the practical effect. This is knowing. This is knowing, folks. I read their review. I read their ruling. I read what the framers of the 14th Amendment said, so now I know they are going against original intent. Well, Joe, this is living document doctrine. Wilson forced that on us. The founding fathers say that is not law. The founding fathers specifically said the Constitution is the Constitution only if you keep to original intent. Anything else is lawlessness. So the 14th Amendment must be understood under the original intent of Howard and those who framed it and argued it. So these justices have willingly, whether through ignorance or otherwise, violated the 14th Amendment and thereby the Constitution of the United States, which violates their oath of office, which is grounds for impeachment, which also makes them an enemy of the United States of America, because the natural extension of their ruling is the overtaking of this country by a flood of foreign peoples who are then allowed to vote. That's making war on the United States of America. That's not sedition. That's not subversion. I mean, it's both, but that's actually waging war on the Constitution. Where's the flaw in my logic? Oh, well, Joe, you can't prove that's not what they said. Yes, it is. It's the natural extension. That's knowing. I hear what they said, and I see what they're going to do with their ruling and what the natural effect is, and I draw the logical conclusion. They are making war on the United States of America. Besides, their political ideology has already said that that is their goal, to overthrow the United States of America as founded. So this is all lawlessness. And the only reason a person could rationally disagree with me, there is none. There isn't. It's not because I'm right. It's because I've done exactly what the founding fathers of the United States expected me to do. I did my homework. I chose to align with what they wanted to do, to live lawfully under the system they created, and to abide by their words. I'm stuck. I can't draw any other opinion than the one that I just articulated for you. Not if I want to claim to have an allegiance to the Constitution. Founding fathers said, collect all the paperwork so that we can go back, posterity, our future generations can go back, read what we were trying to do, how we tried to do it, what we meant by everything. Federalist and anti-Federalist papers, notes on the convention, and the notes on the Bill of Rights. So I did that. And they said specifically that to the extent that you ratify this Constitution is the original intent and only the original intent. Got it. And they thoroughly explained everything in there. So I got that. And it says anything that comes otherwise, this living document thing, that's repugnant to the Constitution, therefore it's not law. Got that. So then when I see what the Supreme Court just did with the 14th Amendment, I realize it's lawlessness. If you are going to go against the Constitution, are you a judge? Are you a judge? Charlie, it's not a rhetorical question. I need somebody to answer this for me. If I go against the Constitution in my rulings, especially if I show a pattern of it, am I actually a judge?
No, because you're violating your oath of office. And
so
you
that
should
makes
be
me at best an oligarch, yes?
At minimum.
But if I have 5 out of 9 judges that are doing this, what I have is an oligarchy, don't I?
Yeah. And an unjust one as well. I mean,
Which is exactly what Jefferson warned the Supreme Court would become.
Yes. He warned us that this would happen.
Unless you kept them in check, which we don't do.
And the problem is as designed, as you were talking about in the first hour, if you had your, few minutes as president, those branches of government are supposed to be co-equal. They're supposed to have the same power. So as the president, as Trump is, he's, listening to the court and abiding by their illegal decisions. It's all just law. It's a mess, because he should be just saying, no, you're wrong. What you just decreed is unconstitutional, and this is why, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not going to enforce it.
So when your preacher preaches that Jesus is love, and you just have to tolerate all this stuff because that's the love of Jesus, you got to do what your pastor said, right?
Yeah. That's exactly what's going on here.
How is that for the sarcasm meter there, Sailor Son?
You
have to read the scriptures for yourself so that you know when your pastor is going off the mark.
Right.
We don't even teach do you realize you can get a law degree, become a judge without ever once having read the United States Constitution?
Yeah. I believe that's possible today. Yeah.
Yes.
And how
you can go through Harvard Law and never read the Constitution or the Declaration.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just a layman. I'm not a lawyer. And I've read the Constitution and Declaration countless times. And I mean, I might not understand everything exactly, as they originally intended, but at least I get the gist of most of it, and I can see where, like the 17th Amendment, that destroyed this nation. That destroyed the sovereignty of the states.
By the way,
It
folks, the
changed the
17th,
United States of America into the United
yeah,
State of America. We are no
and the
longer a federalist country. We are a
oh no,
national
no, no, no,
country.
no, no, no. We are a federalist country that refuses to take back that which is naturally it belongs
Well,
to it.
yeah,
This
yes,
this
from
is
that,
what
but
Steve
well,
this is
we're
what Steve Dace
acting, I guess,
means by
acting as a national, but
yes.
yes,
This is what Steve Dace means by we're not a country of laws, we're a country of political will. That's another thing that a president could do. He could come and say, well, the 17th, the 14th, 15th, 16th are null and void. Why? Well, the 14th, 15th, and 16th were passed by forcing the southern states to ratify them. Well, that's the law says you can't do that. You can't force somebody to do it and then claim that they did
right.
it.
Yeah, you
Okay, that
can't
was
do it
not an
by
act of free will.
coercion.
The
Right.
17th was passed in the middle of the night without a quorum from the Senate, handed to the states. In the states, we do not have a record of the states giving us a majority, a 2/3 vote or whatever it is. There's no record of the enough states ratifying. There's no written record that enough states ratified the 17th Amendment. 17th Amendment was just assumed.
Yeah, and
Well, Joe, how do you know that? If that were the case, people would. No, it is the case. That's why there have been several cases that people took to court, one in court saying they don't want to pay their income taxes, and then the cases were sealed. You can't even go read the records of them. Why? Because they proved their case in court. But then what they did is they turned around and said, you don't have to do it, but everybody else does. It's tyranny. It's tyranny. And how do you not know all of this? Well, it's like Sailor Son said. You haven't missed your baseball games or your football games or your soccer games or this, that, or the other or whatever. You haven't missed any of those. You've scrolled on Facebook for 20, 30, 40 minutes every hour today. But you didn't bother going to do the homework necessary as a citizen.
yeah.
The Federal Reserve Act is
Federal Reserve,
unconstitutional
that's another
itself.
one. Yeah, that's totally unconstitutional. The Constitution does not give any other, because the Federal Reserve is not a government agency. If people,
No.
It's called that to make people think it is, but it is not. It's a civilian organization.
So is the post office.
And they should not be in charge of the currency of this nation. That's unconstitutional.
Well, the Constitution was written that says Congress shall do this and write the laws necessary to execute it. Well, Congress says, well, I'll create all these bureaucracies and I wrote the law to create the bureaucracy so that I can execute my, no. Madison said, no, stop, zero, freeze. The Constitution does not say Congress has the authority to abdicate or assign its authority to another body. It says Congress shall.
Yeah.
And they go, well, it says I can write the laws necessary to do that. You can write the laws necessary for Congress to do this.
To do it. Yeah.
So if you ended all the bureaucracies that are in the federal government, thank you, Woodrow freaking Wilson.
Oh, wow.
Congress would become inept because there is no way in God's green earth that they could attend to all the things that they have grabbed in their greedy little hands through the bureaucracies. They couldn't do it.
Yep.
And you, for the most part, most people don't know this. Ignorance. Wow. Well, I'm sorry. If you want to remain ignorant, you chose to be. That's not going to work on Judgment Day. Well, why didn't you know about Yahweh? Well, nobody ever told me. You go to hell. Too bad. Because the scripture says you should have known just by looking at the stars. Well, that's not in the Old Testament, Joe. You better go read Job again.
Yeah, you better go read.
You better go read Job, because that's exactly where Job finds Yahweh.
That's where it finds it. Yep.
And then when you're done with Job, go read Paul, chapter 1 and 2, Romans 1 and 2. Two witnesses, one in each testament. And then the Psalms tell you that the heavens declare the glory of the Creator and His Son. Say, well, Joe, all this religion talk makes me uncomfortable. That's exactly why they did this to you.
Yeah.
Careful, Joe. They might give you a ticket for being offensive.
I'll own everything that female cop owns and her bosses, not the city. I'm going to sue her and her supervisor. Personally, they're going to say, well, sovereign immunity. I'm going to like, sovereign immunity does not protect you once you've broken the law. Yeah, that's another one. Well, I have presidential sovereign immunity. Does not apply if you've broken the law. Go ask Richard Nixon about that. So, level of snarkiness for me today is up around 7.5 to 8.
Yeah.
And if you stuck with me for an hour with me on an 8, you'd probably be okay with me, because from what Charlie says, I get funnier when I start hitting around a 10, because I start sounding a lot like Arlie Ermy and don't always manage to filter my language.
Right. Yeah. And we don't have a dump button on this show.
Yeah, we don't have a deedle button. So, but basically the point is, if you've stuck with me through today, kudos to you. Don't ask me my sarcasm meter broke earlier in the show. So, anyhow, anything to add, Charlie? Because I'm done. I'm. What are we doing tomorrow, Charlie?
What are we doing? Oh, tomorrow. Tomorrow. Well, I'm gonna attempt
sing
to
and
teach
dance
a little bit more Hebrew. So if you're a glutton for punishment, show up, and at least for the first half an hour or so, we'll do some Hebrew stuff. We're still in the alphabet and learning about vowels mostly, and then I'll just, I don't know, I'll talk about some stuff about languages in Hebrew more specifically, and a few other things like that maybe. But it'll probably be a shorter show than normal, but we'll see how it goes.
When you're done plowing through Drew Johnson's book, I'm going to want you to give us a class on the Hebrew concept of knowing and what that word means in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Because this is another case of this teacher has not changed my understanding of the Bible. He's just expanded it, deepened it. Yeah. Where I had salt and pepper, he has now brought white ghost pepper sauce to my understanding. He has flavored the word. Yeah. But in the process, it has brought more clarity than I already had to certain understandings in the scripture about what it means to know.
Oh, well, yeah, big time.
So, because like when it says, well, they raised a generation did not know Yahweh, it doesn't mean they didn't know his name or know about him or know he exists. Like when Pharaoh says, I don't know Yahweh, he knew darn well who Yahweh was.
He knew of Yahweh. He just didn't.
What it meant is,
Yahweh.
I don't concede to him. I don't bow to him. I don't recognize his authority.
Right.
Yeah, that didn't work out well for him, did it?
No.
So, and that's what the Bible, but then we have all these teachers that I see running around saying, if you don't know Hebrew, you don't understand your Bible because English won't convey the meaning. You want to bet?
Yeah, you can get saved without it.
Yes. Not only that, English is a very precise language if it is used properly. People say, well, the language of engineering is German. Well, yeah, that's because I can shove 50 words together and make one word that means that red broom standing in the corner right there in this room.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And if you think I'm kidding, I can literally make that into one word.
You can literally do that in German, yes.
But guess what?
Like Unabhängigkeitskrieg. That's one of my favorite German words. Well, 2 words, actually.
Well, Farfignugan is one of those words. So, but if you think English is not a precise language, go read the Founding Fathers.
Oh, geez.
Their words. Read their words.
Scalpel with it. But boy, you better be using the 1828 Webster Dictionary. You won't understand it today.
Yep. Just by way of example, go back through the notes on the ratification of the 14th Amendment, and you will run into Mr. Howard down around page 30 or 40, where he says, well, it is my understanding that this text should be written in so clear and forceful and plain a language that the most simple of imbeciles would understand it.
What's that?
And that's how he understood. Yeah, and that's how he understood the language. And the founding fathers said not to read it such that you can beat out whatever meaning you may desire, but rather choose the meaning most likely meant and understood at the time.
Right.
I paraphrased that. I think that's either Madison or Jefferson, but it's a paraphrase. And oh, by the way, when Howard started reading from a book, one of the other senators said, "You are reading from Madison, are you not, sir?" They recognized the Federalist Papers.
Yeah.
Legasp. They wanted us to use logic and reason. Yes, Natasha.
Right.
And by the way,
that's like
one of my most famous, my favorite quotes from Patrick Henry says, "I have no lamp to guide my way, but by the past." I'm paraphrasing it, but if you're ignorant of the past.
Yeah. Oh,
yep.
Big time.
Oh, I forgot to share this one with you folks. If you're going to forget God.
Yeah.
It's not that they forgot God. It's that they forgot to know him, to obey. Yeah. When the people forget God, that tyrants forge their chains. It's when people forget God that tyrants forge their chains. And he had nothing to guide him except the past. All right.
And when we're talking about like Hebrew and stuff like that, it's just like you were talking earlier. It's not that you won't necessarily, be able to taste the food, but it gives you a little extra spice and flavor to it to fully enjoy your meal. And it does, on occasion, it does help you to properly understand things. There are certain times when that is important, but overall,
if you go back in time, you will find out that the understanding of the word "no" does incorporate the Hebrew concept. We have left that definition
if you
aside.
Go back to the King Jamesian language and the understanding of "no" at that time, it's very clear what that means, but we've lost that over time because language has morphed. And that's something that we've got to understand as well, is that language over time, does change, and we have to acknowledge that. I mean, you can see that even in the way the Hebrews use throughout the Bible, there's changes.
One of my favorites in this is, if you ever want to see what I'm talking about, prove it to yourself. Go Google how far back in time can I read English and still understand it.
Yeah. If you got an original King James Version Bible, you could not read it.
Well, I can.
Well, you might be able to, but I mean the average person.
But I've had to study.
Would not be able to.
Okay.
Yeah, the average person would not be able to read it.
Just like if you realize you would have a hard time reading the original Shakespeare if it had not been modified.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because a lot of their words you won't even recognize. They're English, but we've either put them together or separated them. And you have to remember that English is a derivative language of a lot of other languages. It's a hodgepodge. Most of the words in the English language have been taken from other languages. So Sailor Sun says, I have a 1611 King James version and it's difficult to read. Yes, be very difficult to read, because that's closer to the original. That's close to an original language version right there. And that would be a bear. Just like reading Shakespeare in the original is difficult. But I grew up in a time in a school system where I was taught that stuff. And I've since, you don't read the founding fathers without getting exposed to some of the older
even the formation of the letters are different in like, for instance, 1611 or earlier versions of the Bible. So you wouldn't even recognize some of the letters as
you wouldn't.
The way we have them today. So that's one of the reasons it makes it hard to read as well.
Unless you know how to speak German, then you'll recognize some of those letters.
Yeah. Some of that. Yeah, would make it easier. That's true. That's
easier.
true.
Easier.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which you and I happen to be able to do.
Right. So
And there's a reason that German and English are so closely linked. They have common ancestors. All right, we're out of here. Tomorrow's Charlie and Natasha Day. I won't be here. Got family. And for those of you who do join us on Shabbat as well, Sabbath, that's going to be a Charlie and Natasha Day because I won't be there either. I've got family in town. I'm going to be taking time with them. Folks, just let me say thank you. If you made it through the whole show with me today, just let me say thank you. I when I'm in these moods, I know this is me being definitely an acquired taste. And I know that. Not that I would ever have noticed on my own. It's because other people have told me that this is, when I'm in these moods, I'm tough to deal with or to stomach. I get it. I understand. So thank you. Y'all, thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. Sometimes I think I just talk into the ether. And then I'm just doing this for my own pride and arrogance. Let me tell you right now, I'd quit in a heartbeat if I thought Yahweh would let me. I don't think he would. I've tried to quit twice. Not the show. I've tried to quit teaching twice. That hurt both times. I don't want to try again. I don't want to try again. It's too painful and takes too much from me. I guess it's a blessing that I know that what I'm supposed to do is teach. But I don't teach the sheep. And to the extent that the sheep study with me, you won't stay sheep long. You're either you'll stay confused sheep or you're going to become a ram. Learn to be one of the leaders of the flock. I'm meant to teach the shepherds and the sheepdogs. So if you're here with me, understand who you are. I don't think you're sheep. I think you'd have left a long time ago if you were just sheep. You're part of the flock. Don't get me wrong. But you're meant to lead. Most people don't like that. I don't like it. I don't like leadership positions. I'm okay taking care of Joe. I don't like being responsible for other people. But I'll do it when I have to. I hope each and every one of you recognize that that's your role as well. Whether it's in your family, your community, your job, whatever. Lead through word and example. Don't just say, show, so that those around you can know. And with that, we love you. We thank you for being here. I'll see you Monday, tomorrow, Charlie and Natasha. Bye-bye.